Joining us now is Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Let's welcome Frank Zaccanelli.
Live from the Real News Studios in Dallas, Texas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show. Your host, Frank Zaccanelli, has been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for 40 years. And as a former minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he's been asked to comment on current events in the national news for most of his professional career. But what he and many others are really looking for is a place to find just the facts. Welcome to the To Be Frank Show.
Live from Dallas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show, Monday's edition. We're really excited about our show today. We got some really good stuff for everybody. And we've got a very interesting guest. We've got Dr. Daren Martin, who is the CEO and founder of the Global Company Culture Association. He's also a best-selling author, and he's a global speaker. And he'll be with us after the monologue today. So we're excited about having him on the show. And we're going to talk to him about a lot of the current events that are going on and how they affect people's lives. So we're excited about that. So we're happy to be here with you today. I'm your host, Frank Zaccanelli. The show is growing tremendously. And so I want to thank everyone who's out there who's watching the show. You can reach us at the To Be Frank Show at the To Be Frank Show YouTube, the To Be Frank Show Twitter, the To Be Frank Show LinkedIn, the To Be Frank Show Facebook, and the ToBeFrankShow.com. And so those are the mediums that are carrying our show. And like I said, we're really excited about the growth of the show, which is going to allow us to continue to go on and hopefully provide information that is important to you, the listener. And so that's why we started the show. The reason I started this show is because I couldn't watch cable television anymore. I couldn't watch network television anymore as it pertained to the news, because everything became so ideologically biased that it was almost like they had chosen up for a basketball game and they decided how to take sides. The networks have done the same, and the situation really is not one that is fruitful to you, the viewer, in terms of getting unhomogenized, unpasteurized information that you can then make your own decisions. That's what we're trying to do here on the To Be Frank Show. So we're happy to have you here today. Let's get on with the show. In the beginning, I'm going to do almost a little bit of a pre-monologue. And the reason I'm going to do a pre-monologue is there's a couple of really hot items that I want to hit. And then we'll go to our traditional monologue, and then we'll go to our guest. So as we mentioned on the last show, the polls for President of the United States are closing. And I knew this was going to happen. Yesterday, CNN, who is not pro-Trump at all, as a matter of fact, they're anti-Trump in every way you could possibly be anti-Trump, has come out with a brand new poll that shows that the polls are narrowing. Their poll, the new CNN poll that came out yesterday, 50% Biden, 46% Trump, with a margin of error of 4%. So the poll itself now is in the margin of error in terms of the closest now of the poll. And you say, okay, well, polls are going to get a little bit more narrow. Yes, they are. But I think that we're going to talk a little bit about the Republicans, and we're going to talk about what they need to be doing that they're not doing, and some of the things they are doing that they don't need to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Democrats, and we're going to give you some information about what they're doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And so that's going to tell the tale. We're a little less, I think, now than 80 days outside the election. I've told you from the beginning, the election is going to be a crazy time. The next 80 days are going to be one of the most turbulent, divided, crazy times in our country's history, because this election is absolutely got people bonkers. And I just wish that, again, we could get a few things done in our country while we're running this presidential election, but there's no hope of that. So we'll get to some of that. But Biden Harris have got to be careful. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. Last show, I talked a little bit about the pluses and the minuses to Kamala Harris. We've got another segment on Kamala Harris today because unlike any election ever in the history of our country, the vice presidential nominee to Joe Biden is probably the most important vice presidential nominee in U.S. presidential election history. Now, why do I say that? Well, because Joe is really hidden. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And I'm not trying to talk people off of Joe Biden. I'm not trying to tell people they shouldn't vote for him. I'm not trying to tell people to vote for Trump. We're not doing that on the show. But the way that Biden has approached this, he's really been undercover. Now, Kamala Harris is not somebody who's going to be undercover. She loves the camera. And the camera, loves her. She looks good on camera. She speaks well. But there's some underlying issues that we'll talk some about. But clearly, the polls are tightening now. And I think we can expect that this is going to be one hell of a ride. We'll follow it the whole way. The second kind of newsworthy item before the monologue is this situation in Portland and Seattle just seems to get worse and worse and worse. And we predicted this on this show. Lawlessness and the inability to control rioting breeds more lawlessness and more rioting. That's just a fact. I'm not making that up. That's what we have in Portland and in Seattle. And we have a situation where it's not getting any better. Actually, it's getting worse. And both these mayors who have, I believe, and I think most of the country believes, have completely botched this situation. Teddy Wheeler in Portland and the Summer of Love, Janie Durkin, okay? Summer of Love mayor, also Summer of Love, okay? Their whole ideology is creating the mess that we're dealing with. Not indifferent, and we're getting to this in a big way today. Both hands, both arms, both legs around this one. The Billy D. de Blasio Baghdad Bill scenario, because there's a lot of news about this guy over the weekend, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But in Portland, you got a mess. You become an advertisement, really, for unrest. 81 days of unrest in Portland. And this is not a protest about the wrongful death, the wrongful killing of George Floyd. This isn't about any of that. This has gone so far beyond that. These people, I'd say half of them don't even know who the hell George Floyd is. This is about people that don't like our country. And they feel that in Seattle and Portland, and also in New York, but in Seattle and Portland for this piece of the discussion, that they can get away with it. That's the reason that they're doing it. And let me say this. If Biden and Kamala Harris embrace this type of thing, they're going to lose. They're going to lose the election. You heard it right here, right now. If they embrace this kind of lawlessness, they're going to lose the election. In Seattle, yesterday, 18 people were arrested, throwing rocks at police, throwing explosives at police. I mean, this is just out of control. And again, it is really easy for the ideological news person to take a side on this. If you're the Republicans, well, this is insane, and look at these people, and here's the deal. If you're the Democrats, well, Trump really caused this and all this other stuff. Forget about all that. These are mayors of cities. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're Republican. I don't care if they're independent. Along with governors of these states that are allowing for this to happen. Plain and simple. This doesn't have anything to do with politics beyond that, other than the fact if they think that because these are democratically run cities from the mayor's perspective, if they think they're hurting the Republican Party, they're out of their minds. They should go on vacation or resign. I mean, they're only hurting themselves, and they're hurting the Democratic Party. I mean, I hate to see this. I don't want to see this in the United States. okay? But here's the situation. You know, it's lawlessness and it's rioting, and the protests are long gone. They are long gone. And the reason that this has gone on for 81 days is they think they can still get away with it. Try this in Dallas, Texas. Try this in Houston, Texas. Try this in Charlotte, North Carolina. Try this in Phoenix, Arizona. Try it and see how well you do. Okay? You're not going to do very well. Okay? It stopped in Los Angeles. Los Angeles has got a Democratic mayor, Democratic governor. It stopped there. Not that it's completely ended, but, you know, they had their moment, and it hasn't gone on for 81 days. Only in places where they think they can get away with it, where the mayors are complicit. They're complicit with this, no matter what they say. Now, all of a sudden, Teddy Wheeler wants to talk about, oh, you know, now we got a real problem. Yeah, you got a real problem. You created the problem. So we're going to keep an eye on both of these scenarios. And then finally, the Donald. I could call him the Donald. We're going to cover this, you know, over the course of the show. All right, I can call him the Donald. Secretly watch the show from the Oval Office. He's got it on. Sometimes he has to turn the sound down, okay? Gave Bill de Blasio, Billy D, an ultimatum. He says, either you clean this city up or I'm going to come in and clean it up. Now, you want to know something? Bravo to Donald Trump on that particular item, because I'm going to get on him in just a minute. But bravo to Donald Trump on that item. Now, you got to ask yourself the question, and we'll get into this further in the monologue. What the hell is the governor doing? The son of Mario Cuomo, is he bird watching out of his window? And we're going to get into some of this because he made some comments that we're going to talk a little bit about a few months ago that are now coming back on top of them. So we're going to cover that. But he had 30 shootings, 5 deaths in New York. I talked to people in New York. I know a lot of people in New York. I spent a ridiculous amount of time there in my lifetime, okay? It's the greatest city in the United States and one of the greatest cities in the world. It is being completely ruined. Rents are down. People are leaving the city in numbers that no one has ever seen. This is the worst situation since World War II. Bill de Blasio and Mario Cuomo's son, Andrew Cuomo, have run this city and this state into the ground. They're losing tax base. Wait till you see now what happens and the effects on their pension system and everything else. This is terrible news for everybody. But we're going to get into this a little bit further as we go. Okay, to the monologue. The Donald. He now has created another birther issue. And he creates these things out of thin air. Okay? Now, I've talked to conservatives over the last 2 or 3 days. Well, he backed off it at the end. And well, he said we're not going to pursue this. And he said this and he said that. Let me tell you what else he said. Let me read to you and tell you what else he said. Quote, I heard today that she doesn't meet the requirements. And by the way, the lawyer who wrote it, this piece is highly qualified and very talented. Okay? He said that. And then, of course, he put his qualifiers on the backside. Isn't one birther issue, Donald, enough for you to understand that this doesn't play well in the United States? Remember what I talked about the last show, and I am so committed to this, I can't talk about it enough. Over here on the left, my left over here, you got a 40% base. Biden, Kamala Harris have a 40% solid base. Okay? You can argue it's 42%, it's 38%. It's a 40% base. Over here, on my right, you got the Donald, and he's got a solid 40% base. The election is going to be won in the center. Okay? There's 20% of the independent vote of people that are out there that are looking at the facts, that are trying to decide what to do. I happen to be one of those. I'm an independent voter. I'm an independent mindset. I am the quintessential independent guy. I like things on the Republican side, and I like some things on the Democratic side. Donald, are you trying to make sure that you don't get one African American vote? Because that's exactly what you're doing. It's just unbelievable. You're taking the bait every single time you get baited. And I don't understand why you're doing it. You're much smarter than that. I mean, you've been in business and politics now for long enough. You're getting baited with all this stuff. Let me give you a redo of the press conference as I see what you should have done. Oh, Mr. Trump, what do you think about this Kamala Harris? She may not be qualified, some lawyer. I'd say, let me explain it to you. She's qualified. She was born in Oakland, California. Next question. How hard is that? She was born in Oakland, California. Now, I got to read something to you. This was a little bit bothersome. I looked at the background of this Eastman guy, okay? This is the guy that's the lawyer that wrote the op-ed in Newsweek that created all this. Now, the magazine is run from this, okay? They've sent out, a bunch of stuff. Listen, we're not that tied into this, and, we're sorry if we offended anybody. This Eastman guy, who's a lawyer and I guess a professor, has argued over and over that the constitutional law is not yet settled on the question of whether being born in the United States makes you a citizen. All right, well, then the bottom line is that my parents and, literally hundreds of millions of people that came to this country, what the hell are we talking about here? I mean, this guy is conservatively off his rocker, all right? This guy's off his rocker, all right? He's creating a birther issue with an African American vice presidential candidate. You got to be out of your mind. And for anybody in the Trump campaign to take this bait, you really got to be out of your mind. Roll the tape.
So I just heard that. I heard it today that she doesn't meet the requirements. And by the way, the lawyer that wrote that piece is a very highly qualified, very talented lawyer. I have no idea if that's right. I would have assumed the Democrats would have checked that out before she gets chosen to run for vice president. But that's a very serious. You're saying that they're saying that she doesn't qualify because she wasn't born in this country.
No, she was born in this country, but her parents did not. The claims say that her parents did not receive their permanent residence at that time.
I don't know about it. I just heard about it. I'll take a look.
You heard the president there. It was a new low and a day full of lows. The president of the United States questioning the legitimacy of Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket, the presumptive vice presidential nominee to be president or vice president of the United States. She obviously is qualified to be vice president. She is a natural-born citizen of the United States who was born in this country. But the president was asked about this crackpot theory that has shown up on right-wing media, suggesting that Senator Harris is not qualified to be a vice president. That is just a flat-out lie. It's not the case. It was a lie when they said it about Barack Obama. It's now a lie when they're saying it about Kamala Harris.
Okay, so let's give the Donald a little bit of his due. He has said now publicly, we're not going to pursue this, and I don't know, and everything else. Okay, let me go through the ground rules again. 40 and 40-20. This piece in here, it's insane to say anything other than, I wish Kamala Harris well. I wish your family well. She was born in Oakland, and you know what? We're going to beat them at the polls. I mean, how hard is this? He just creates these controversies that are so unnecessary. And I hate to see it because it's not good for the country. He is the president of the United States, whether you're out there and you like it or not. And he should be treated with respect. But the problem is he puts his foot in his mouth over and over and over and over. Now, I hope we can get past this, but I had to cover it on this show because it lends to the arguments that I'm making, that you got to be here. You know, the bases are already set. Here's where the election's going to be won or lost. And I just wish that both candidates would talk about what they're going to do to make your lives better instead of worrying about some birther issue. All right. Segment 2 is about Kamala Harris, and Newt Gingrich came out with a op-ed column that said that she was anti-Catholic. Now, for the record, I want all the viewers to know, I practice my Christianity through the Catholic Church. Do I agree with them on everything? No. Do I agree on the mess that was created with the priests and some of the things? Absolutely not. Okay? There's a lot of bad things that occurred inside the Catholic Church, but I've been a Catholic, my family's been Catholic, and I look through those things to a much greater power. And so I use the Catholic Church to express my Christianity. So I want to give that qualifier before I get into this subject. But the fact of the matter is very simple. We sit here and we look at this thing. I said on the last show that I would not have taken Kamala Harris because she's too polarizing. She's too far left. She is, let's make the argument, okay? A couple of polls had her as the most liberal senator in 2018, I believe in 19. I used 2019 last show. Let's assume she's in the top 3. Okay? I would not have advised Joe Biden to pick somebody that was that far left. But now she has an opportunity to alienate 51 million American voters. Why 51 million? There's 51 million Catholics in the United States of America. 51 million, okay? So if you're going to alienate them, you ought to be careful about how you do it. Let me read from the Newt Gingrich, and you guys can make up your own mind on this, but this is pretty telling stuff. She has been very anti-Catholic in confirming federal judges. Okay? Now, I have to tell you, her display with the Supreme Court nominee of Donald Trump's, Brett Kavanaugh, at the time of the hearings was, in my opinion, disgraceful. And I said that the last time we had our show. It wasn't her shining hour. But she has been very anti-Catholic as it relates to federal judges. She wanted to prosecute the Little Sisters of the Poor. Can't make this up. I mean, I'm just reading it, okay? She wanted to prosecute the Little Sisters of the Poor. When you go after the Little Sisters of the Poor, you probably should take 3 days off, go out in the balcony, have a couple glasses of wine, relax a little bit. The Little Sisters of the Poor. She wanted to close Catholic hospitals because they were not willing to join her union allies. Now that is about as left as you can get. Let me tell you something. I came from a union background with my father. It was at a time when the unions really protected the workers. Now it's become so political that you really have to ask yourself the question, and I believe if the Democratic Party keeps going left, they're going to lose a lot of this union support. Don't forget, you've got massive numbers of employees that are union employees, and they're spoken for by a small number of spokespeople. The union employee is not going to go along necessarily with what the union representatives are talking about. All these union representatives, they're all bought off, okay? You could talk to anybody in the unions. That's where this has become. They get in a position of power and they get bought off. And again, I'm pro-union when they take care of the workers' needs, not their own needs. But she had a problem with the Catholic hospitals. And then, this one's pretty bad. She favored taxpayer abortions up until birth, all right, up until the time the baby is laid on the table. She twice voted against bills that would ensure that babies who lived through abortion procedures get medical care. She voted against this twice, okay? So you have to ask yourself the question. You know, you've got this whole situation with this guy in this governor in Virginia. The new governor of Virginia, the guy, Terry McAuliffe, is one of the greatest politicians in the history of politics. He's a friend of mine. I've known him since we were kids. We grew up about 2 miles from each other. He'll be the next governor. But you got this Norton guy who's up there that said, you know, let's have the baby, put it on the table, and then we'll have a discussion about what we're going to do with the baby. Kamala Harris voted for these things. I mean, I can't, again, this is a matter of public record. I can't make it up. So these are the things that I think you have to really concern yourselves with. Again, I am not trying to tell you how to vote, because there are some pluses, I'm sure, with Kamala Harris. You know, for somebody like Joe Biden, he needs somebody that can go out and hold a rally and speak to, you know, thousands and thousands of people. You know, he already made up his mind he was going to get a female, and he hoped that it would be an African-American female, and he certainly got that. So there are pluses with Kamala Harris. I'm not trying to run her into the ground, but you're going to have to understand that when you alienate 51 million Catholics in the United States, all right, that's a big voting block. And guess where that voting block is really located? It's located in the Midwest, the cities. It's located all over the country, but a large segment is in the Midwest, in these swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, you know, all these swing states that are out there. All right, that's where a big block of this Catholic population is. So I just throw it out to you. I thought that the op-ed was interesting. And, you know, I just think, again, that the Democrats are going to have to decide how far to the left are they going to go in the next 80 days. My advice to them is concentrate on the 20%. Leave your base alone. It's the same advice I give to the Trump campaign. That's where the election, and this will be a razor-thin election, okay? We won't know for days, potentially, who the President of the United States is. But deal with the middle, because your base is already set. Did we roll that tape? Roll the tape.
Interesting read, by the way. Okay, so let's start with this. National Review says this. Headline, Kamala Harris's anti-Catholic bigotry says, someone might want to remind Joe Biden, who's just picked progressive California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, that his vice president-to-be believes Catholics are unfit to serve in our nation's courts. And Alibeth, you may remember this as we covered it, and our viewers will as well. There was a Catholic nominee who was a member of the Knights of Columbus who was questioned about his issues on abortion and marriage. And there was a lot of backlash in the Senate when she pushed him on that, as if suggesting that as if he was a practicing Catholic, he wouldn't be fit for the federal bench.
Yes, she was trying to make the case that that disqualifies you from taking the position that he was nominated to take, that having values, that people who believe in the Bible and who hold the Catholic faith and the Christian faith in general have believed for millennia that marriage is defined by God and that life in the womb is sacred. She tried to make the argument that that's reprehensible, that that is something that disqualifies you. Not only is that something that violates First Amendment principles, but it also shows just her feelings, her attitudes towards religious people and their views in general.
So you heard about the Knights of Columbus. Now I'm going to tell you a family story in a minute. But she questioned a now U.S. district judge because he was part of the Knights of Columbus Association. Now let me tell you what the Knights of Columbus is for those of you that don't know. It feeds the poor among many other charitable things that they do. Now, how do I know a little bit about the Knights of Columbus? Well, here's why. My father, back in upstate New York, for about 3 years was the president of the Knights of Columbus in that chapter in upstate New York. Now, they did an incredible amount of good work. They did work around the schools. They did work around the neighborhoods. And outside of all that, they were just a bunch of Catholic guys that got together, had a couple beers, and figured out, how do we make things better? Okay? So you're just, you're not going to get anywhere by doing that. If you're a senator from California, you can get away with that. If you're the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket, you're going to have a much harder time with that. So we're going to have to see how this plays, and we're going to have to see where she goes in the next 80 days. That will have a lot to do with where I go. But we're going to follow it all the way down the line. Okay. Segment 3. And I could almost have predicted this one. All right. This is so predictable that it's just hard to even explain. The NYPD a few days ago endorsed Donald Trump for President of the United States. Now, if that's a big shocker to anybody, you probably shouldn't get out of bed in the morning. All right? The NYPD has had sand kicked in its face by Billy D. de Blasio and indirectly, I'm sorry, by Andrew Cuomo. And there's no other way for these people to go. I mean, you take a look at New York City now, the lawlessness that's going on there. I talked to people in the neighborhoods. They said that there are problems on the street that they haven't seen in 40 years. In 40 years. There are robberies. There are homeless people all over the place. And again, we've got to be sensitive to our homeless people, but we've got to take care of them. Can't turn a city over to them. Okay, you got to take care of these people. And I believe that the private sector has a lot of responsibility in order to do that. But that's for another topic, another show. But being homeless is something that we all should be incredibly connected to, because these people need our help. But you don't do it the way that Bill de Blasio is doing it. You don't turn the #1 city in the United States over to this and run everyone else out. I mean, the exodus coming out of there, again, I got friends up there. I talk to people. They say it is unbelievable that property values potentially, now I'm a real estate guy, so I'm going to give you my view of the world. They're going to go down between 30 and 50% before this is over. That is an unbelievable statistic. Now, they were getting too high anyway, and pricing was going crazy in Manhattan a year ago, Brooklyn a year ago. But let me tell you something. You're going to see a drop that is going to be catastrophic to the landlords in that city. And it's all because you cannot run a city the way that Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo have run it. Let me give you a couple other statistics. You can't, people say, and the Democrats were really, I think, caught off guard a little bit in New York, and then they were like really upset. They got upset. Well, what are you doing? You can't, you guys can't endorse Donald Trump. Well, why not? Why not? If you're going to kick sand in our face, what do you expect us to do? You defund the police $1 billion. Let me repeat, not $1 million, $1 billion you take out of the police budget. And you expect that now you're going to have law and order? You expect the NYPD is going to be happy? And all you've done is criticize them. Oh, policing, and again, let's cover this. Let's make sure we get right in the middle here. There have been police problems, especially in the minority community, and they got to be fixed. And we got to fix them. I don't see that we're really fixing them. I see a lot of gestures to go out there and fix them, but I don't see anything concrete. Like I said last show, I'm going to say every show. I'd like for this show the To Be Frank show. I'd like for it to be part of the process. I'd love to be part of the process of figuring out how we actually fix the problems instead of just talk about them. But having said that, you're now upset, Democrats, that the NYPD has decided they're going to endorse Trump? It's ridiculous. What do you expect them to do? You can't keep kicking sand into somebody's face and not expect them to respond. Okay? You got a situation that's very interesting. So I have said, Bill de Blasio's got to go. Get him out of there. There comes a point where an elected official is no longer capable of doing his job. Okay? If this isn't the scenario, then I don't know what is. I'm a little bit short of that, even though I'm getting closer and closer, with the Mayor of Love and Teddy Wheeler. All right? The Mayor of Love in Seattle, Teddy Wheeler in Portland. I'm getting closer to that, but I'm not there yet. With de Blasio, it's game over. This is game over. Now, on June the 2nd of this year, Governor Andrew Cuomo, son of Governor Mario Cuomo, I say it every show, greatest governor in New York's history. He ought to really look at his father's legacy and try to figure out how to follow it, number one, and number two, am I ruining it? All right, that would be a disgrace. On June the 2nd, Governor Cuomo said that he could remove, he had the authority and the power to remove Bill de Blasio, but it wasn't at that point yet. Not at that point yet. What about now, August 17th? Are we at the point yet? Are we there, Governor Cuomo, where, like in the old vaudeville acts, you get the, the cane and you just grab the guy by the neck, get him off stage? I mean, are we there yet? What else has to happen? I mean, does the city now basically need to just implode? I mean, because it's happening right before our eyes. So what is the now final decision that you're going to make? I mean, if this isn't it, what the hell are we talking about? You got the authority to do it. Why haven't you done it? Roll the tape.
Well, the union president says he can't remember the last time the PBA ever endorsed someone for president. And New Yorkers we spoke to say they're not so happy about it.
I was really disappointed.
Reaction tonight from New Yorkers after a hearty endorsement from the NYPD police union Friday night for President Donald Trump.
In the New York City PBA, Mr. President, you earned the endorsement, and you've earned this endorsement. I'm proud to give it.
The Police Benevolent Association, representing around 24,000 New York City police officers, made the announcement from Trump's golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. The president also expressing his admiration and appreciation for the department.
I've admired you my whole life. I've watched you do a job like nobody else. Nobody else has done it. And truly, you're the best of the best, and I'm grateful, and I'm very happy that you're here.
But some aren't so happy. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeting in part, quote, "Does anyone else see a potential problem with police unions promoting preferred candidates for office, or is that just me?" New York City Councilman Donovan Richards also sounding off.
It's shameful. It's deplorable. And I would urge the members of that union to certainly speak up.
There have been calls for police reform following large protests and clashes with officers in the city after the death of George Floyd. And New Yorkers who spoke to News 4 say they're disappointed to see the police union taking a step backwards.
A step backwards. Are any of these people that went on camera, are they paying attention to what's going on inside their city? Are they paying attention? Or is this hate that I continue to talk about on this show, that now in this case is directed to the Donald, is the hate so big that no one cares? Because if you don't see what's going on here, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it is as clear as the nose on your face. And Governor Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, needs to put down his bird-watching binoculars and get his ass down to New York City, if you will, and figure out what the hell he's going to do. Because this is at now catastrophic proportions. And so somebody is going to have to save this city. And if this city goes down, then we've blown it 100 ways to Sunday. That's all I can say. You know, Portland and Seattle, they got to get their act together too. And again, like I said, I'm not quite there yet on their mayors, but I'm close. Because this just can't go on. You cannot have this anarchy and this lawlessness in our cities. Now, how does this play into the presidential election? All right? I have advised the Biden campaign to stay 1 million miles away from this, number one. And to number two, if asked the question, to deplore the activities in these cities and say we've got to get back to law-abidingness. Law-abidingness. Got to get back there. Okay? If they in any way, shape, or form jump on the bandwagon and blame some of this on the Republicans, they're done. This is going to be their coronavirus. So my advice is to get out in front of this one. Don't get caught up in this one. Don't do what Trump just did on the birther thing. Don't do what he did on the coronavirus. Okay? This is going to be your coronavirus. You have an opportunity, Biden and Kamala Harris, to state the obvious here. We just can't have a country if you keep doing this. So we're going to see how all that washes itself out. All right. Segment number 4 is kind of an interesting segment. I saw it over the weekend and I thought it should be a part of the show. It has to do with testing with the coronavirus. Roll the tape.
A big breakthrough out of New Haven. Researchers at Yale developed a saliva-based COVID-19 test, and today the U.S. Food and Drug Administration gave the test emergency approval. Joining us right now is Dr. Chantal Vogels, one of the researchers at the Yale School of Public Health. Doctor, thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem.
Can you tell us about this COVID-19 saliva test? How long did it take to develop?
So it took us a couple of months to develop the Saliva Direct. And we're really happy that now the FDA issued emergency use authorization, because that really means that the clinical labs, the CLIA certified labs, can start using it to test.
How long? You said it took a few months to develop. How quickly can people get the results?
So for us, it takes about 3 hours to test 92 samples.
Wow, that's quick compared to the swab test. How long does that take?
That takes a little bit longer, and that's mainly because there's an extraction step. So you extract the genetic material from the virus, and that you then test with a polymerase chain reaction test, a so-called PCR test. We're still using this PCR test, but we found a way to skip the extraction step. So we're just simply treating the saliva with an enzyme and with a heating step, and that proved to be sufficient for accurate testing.
Well, as you guys now have heard, this could be revolutionary, because my big complaint is there are certain parts of the country where you go in and get a test. I mentioned on a show or two ago, I can go pay some money and get a test right up the street at a private clinic. And I've got, a couple $100 I could spend on this. But what about the family that can't do that? I get my results back in 2 to 3 hours. But this could be revolutionary for the average person who's out there that shouldn't be in a situation where they feel they have symptoms, they need to be tested. I told a story about a friend of mine in upstate New York that was called by the health department and said, hey, listen, you got to quarantine for 10 days. You've been exposed to the virus. He goes and he gets tested. They said, we'll let you know in 12 days. What the hell good did that do? That's the problem around the country. So this could be revolutionary. This could be something that's really, really interesting. The preliminary information is the test is as good as the swab test. So we've just got to see now what this is. We're going to keep an eye on this. This could be a big game changer. And now the last segment before we have our guest on, and I'm going to get through this in 2 to 3 minutes. The left is mocking the death of Donald Trump's brother. Shame on you. Okay? Shame on you. There is no dignity, integrity, or character left in this country in certain sectors. And I'm not saying left, right, or indifferent, but here, the president's brother has passed away. Can we not say a prayer for the president's brother and wish him well? And say a prayer for the president? I mean, are we so far gone that we can't do that? 80,000 people Sunday morning. Now it's Monday afternoon almost. But 80,000 people on Sunday morning had tweeted this garbage. Who knows? It's over 100,000. It is what it is. We wish it was the president instead of his brother. How about that? I mean, is this what we've become as a country? Am I the only person that's sick and tired of seeing and listening to this? I don't think so. We're getting almost 100,000 viewers a segment here, a show. And I believe that's going to grow based on the fact that people are disgusted with this. This is not how we need to run our country. What the hell does Donald Trump's brother have to do with anything? You know what? May he rest in peace. I mean, this is what we've become as a society. This is how thick the hate is. And it's all fed by a media that has picked sides and negatively talked and created a canyon-wide divide, which is exactly why I do this show. But this made me really upset, as you can see. I mean, let's have some dignity here. Let's have a little bit of character and integrity here in this country as we go about picking our next president. Let's have a little dignity. Okay. Let's go to our guest, Dr. Daren Martin, who's going to talk about a myriad of different things. Dr. Martin, are you there? Hold on, we can't hear you right now. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can now. How are you?
All right. I'm fantastic, Frank. How are you, man? I've really enjoyed listening to this whole entry. That's great.
Well, you know, we try, Dr. Martin, not to take political views here, even though we talk a lot about political things. But what I'm trying to do on this show, and this is why I was happy to have you on, is really talk about how we fix the problems. You know, how do we fix the problems in the United States? You know, people ask me all the time, well, you're a Republican. No. Well, you're a Democrat. No. I'm an independent, but I'm an American. I want to see what's best for our country. And I know that you've written books and you've publicly spoke all over the world. How do you see the current situation in the United States on kind of all fronts?
It feels like we've just gone nuts, right? Like the country's gone crazy. We're the most divided I've ever seen the country, and I'm 58 years old. But yeah, we're living in, you know, the energy level, the bad stuff that's being put out there is ridiculous. And I think it's been building and growing for some time. And my only hope is that it's going to be the precursor to a real turnaround for our nation.
How do you see this becoming the precursor, though? See, what I see, Dr. Martin, is I see a canyon-wide divide that is really created by hate and ideology. That's what I see. And I see the media in partnership with this divide. And so, you know, I'm trying to get to where you're at. I'm trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Help me see that light a little bit better.
Well, let me give you a microcosm instead of just the country as a whole and all the political stuff going on, et cetera. So really my area of expertise, probably good for me to stay in that lane, is company culture. Company culture, by the way, is a lot like country culture. But if we look at the state of work, before this whole COVID thing came along, what we realized was we were in really bad shape already. Gallup shows year over year that we have a 29% employee engagement rate in this country. It's 15% globally. It's estimated that 85% of people either hate their job or dislike their job. And I think a lot of that is fueling this. If you're not happy at work, if work is not fulfilling, if it's not something that you get up every day and you're excited to go to, then it bleeds over into the other areas of your life, and people start looking for things to, throw rocks at, or to be upset about, or to, just be all bent out of shape over. So if we were looking at the world of work pre-COVID, I would compare it to this. If you were, had serious issues, you're in ICU, you've got, health issues just, a mile long, and then COVID starts and you get COVID, your likelihood of surviving that are not very good. If you're a healthy individual, you're healthy in body, mind, spirit, then you got a lot greater chance of surviving any disease when you get right down to it. But what we're finding is we're going through this huge shift in the way we think about life, and certainly the way we think about work. I mean, look, Frank, how many people are working from home versus what used to be going on? Now, we've known, we had a Stanford survey that came out, several years ago that showed that people actually work harder from home. They give you 3 more weeks of discretionary effort than people who work in a job, because they're not distracted by a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying everybody should work from home or that ought to be the solution. But the real brokenness is just the way we think about life, period, and the way we think about work in particular. If you go back to the Industrial Revolution, we took work that my grandfather worked in the oil fields. He was also a farmer. He drove a bus. I think he must have slept like 4 hours, but he was very committed and dedicated to his work. But when the Industrial Revolution came along, we made a deal, and this was the deal. Okay, Frank, you're going to come to work. I'm going to pay you some money, and that's it. That's the only deal. And I hear people say all the time, well, isn't it enough to just get paid? If I took that approach to my marriage, I said, look, we're not going to eat out. I'm not going to say sweet things to you. I'm not going to try to, love you and care for you. I'm just going to give you some money, and you're going to, take care of my physical needs. Well, we have a word for that. And nobody's going to sign off on that deal. So I think a lot of this is breaking what has been a broken system anyway when we get into culture. And our culture as America is under great strains.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said. I've said publicly on the show that this didn't just happen because of George Floyd. George Floyd was the last stick of dynamite that ignited this, because the pent up was already in place. And you can see that now with George Floyd's memory being a distant memory with what's going on in some of our major cities. I mean, they're not protesting the death of George Floyd anymore. They're protesting the fact they don't like our country, and they don't like our system of government, and they don't like this and they don't like that. So I would agree 1,000% with you when you say that it was brewing well before the COVID-19. What happened with the COVID-19 in my mind, and I'd like your opinion on this, is that also was a stick of dynamite that started isolating people. It started getting people off of their games, if you will. I mean, I can't remember any time in my life where I've been forced to have to live the way that I'm living because of the pandemic. I mean, it has completely turned people's lives upside down. And you say?
Yeah, so the whole idea of social distancing, now please hear me out on this. I think in many ways, I'm not talking about the wearing masks and staying, 6 feet from people, but just the message that's drilled in our head every day, isolate, 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 is the worst thing you can do in a crisis situation. There's a reason that in World War I, World War II, the suicide rate actually goes down because people are pulling together, they've got a common cause. Well, this is the first time that we've had something of this scale that basically we're telling people, stay away from everybody else, isolate yourself. And there's a reason that the depression rate is going up and all these things. By the way, I have a little bit of expertise in this. I've got a PhD in psychology. But I think we've sent the absolute wrong message with just even the terminology. What we ought to be talking about is stay healthy, be healthy, take care of other people. I can't tell you, Frank, I go on these walks. I've been trying to walk 3-5 miles a day, and I'll pass people on the street. Hello, good morning. How are you today? I've got a mask on, right? And they don't even look at me. I want to stop them and say, hey, being friendly doesn't cause COVID. You can't catch COVID from smiling at somebody. But that's kind of the message that we have given over and over and over again. You're not safe dealing with other people, so you ought to just build this little bubble for yourself. And when we do that, this is what we get.
All right, so I've taken the position on this show, Dr. Martin, that you can't solve the COVID-19 issue, cannot solve it just by printing money in the U.S. Treasury. You have to open up the country, but you have to open up the country safely. There has to be a combo platter between what the government does fiscally to help people that are out of work and actually opening up the country. Let's take New York for a great example. Cuomo's got this thing still locked down in areas he doesn't need to have it locked down in anymore. That's been my contention. But when you take a look at the state of Texas, you take a look at Florida, you take a look at Arizona, you take a look at some of the southern states, Republican states, that opened up prematurely, that was a disaster inside itself. That's the problem that I think we face in this country, is the COVID-19 issue has become political. But on one side, people don't want to open up, and it can't be anything to me other than the fact it's political. But yet some of the states opened up, in my opinion, too early, didn't have the precautions in place, didn't have the protocols in place, and that was a mistake too. How do you answer that?
So it's certainly illogical, whether it's political or not, and I have to believe that politics is so far into this thing. But look, Frank, you live in Dallas. Some of the stuff that we've done is kind of nonsensical. Like, I live 2 blocks from the Dallas Museum of Art, from the Nasher Sculpture Center, right? I've never been in the DMA when somebody was standing closer than 6 feet to me. It is, very low attendance. It's not this is not huge crowds. Well, the DMA has been shut down for this whole time. It's as if what we said was, let's just suck the soul right out of the American people. Let's give them nothing to go. My wife and I used to go to a movie every week, and we got a couple theaters we can walk to. Right. Of course, the movie theater shut down. We have taken everything that would be a relief or a way to kind of engage with other people and a way to do that safely without, conveying the disease. And we've just shut all of that stuff out. And I think that's part of the, despair you see.
But here in Texas, Dr. Martin, do you think that in the beginning when they opened up 2 months ago, do you think they did it properly? Because I don't.
Well, yeah, and we see the aftermath of that. The big issue here with COVID is this is really unprecedented territory. We've had epidemics before, but we're finally at a place scientifically and in other ways where we can study it and look at it and take some steps and take some actions. By the way, in contrast to what I have been saying, I would say this: I think it has been great for a lot of people to have to chill out, sit back, get in a different environment. And in many ways, I've talked to people who said, look, I'm more productive, but my life just feels better because I'm not under the pressure of, going to useless meetings and having to deal with all this office politics. So there's a lot of upside. And that's why I'm positive about what I think this can actually do for our country. But it's a mess right now.
Yeah, the people that I concern myself with, and I know you do too, are the people that are out of work, that own restaurants, own family businesses, that have really been affected by this. This is really a hard time for those people. And, if you work for a bigger company and the company says, okay, just work from home, that's one thing. But when you own a business and you have employees, and those employees now can't go to work, restaurants, spas, you just a number of different things. Those are the people that I concern myself with, and those are the people I think that are going to be the most dramatically hurt. Last question. So as you look at the landscape, do you think that we're going to eventually figure out in the United States how we live with this pandemic? Because every scientist that I've talked to has said categorically this is not going to go away right away. This pandemic is going to be with us for another 12 to 18 months. Let's assume that's right. Do you see the American public, because this is what you deal with, do you see them finally getting in a proper mode with this pandemic and figuring out now how, though our lives have changed, on how they could still become very fruitful?
You hope that's what happens, and that we evolve through that and people start to focus in different areas. I've used this whole COVID time to try to level myself up on multiple levels. I've been listening to a lot of media, a lot of content. But Frank, are we going to get through this is left to minds much greater than I. And I really appreciate your perspectives on this, but we're going to survive. We always do. I mean, we always make it through. And for the history of this company, typically we come out improved, better, some kind of advance. So that's my hope and prayer is what we're going to see happen.
Right. So how do people contact you? How do they follow you, Dr. Martin?
So I'm super easy to find. Daren, thank you to my parents for spelling my name. It's an odd spelling, but D-A-R-E-N, one R and an E, and then Martin. And I'm at DarenMartin.com. All my books are on Amazon. I'm pretty, if you just, not to sound obnoxious, but if you Google Daren Martin, you'll find a lot of content and a lot of other stuff, ways to get a hold of me.
All right. Well, it's great to be with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I think you provided some really good insight for our viewership, and we'll look to have you on again in the near future. So, Daren, be safe, and good luck.
Thank you, Frank, and you created a new fan. I'm going to be watching you.
All right.
Thank you.
I want you to put this out. We'll send you the tape on this, and I want you to put it out to all of your followers. Okay?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Thanks, Frank.
All right. Thank you, Daren. Thank you. Okay, so that was a great interview from a guy that really does this for a living. Kind of in closing, I think our problem in America is two or threefold. I think, first of all, we don't have a lot of discipline when it comes to this pandemic. We just don't. You take a look at the youth of the country. I was once part of the youth of the country. I mean, I'm telling you, the car couldn't get packed fast enough to go to Daytona Beach during spring break, okay? I was the first guy, all right? So I get it all. I really get it. And I was the first guy when we got back to school. Where are my buddies? Where's the party? What's going on? But we've got to understand, and the youth of our country has got to understand, they live in a different time right now. And it doesn't seem to me that in any way, shape, or form, they've recognized this, or they've recognized the spread and the problem that they're creating. When you take a look at things like Dr. Martin just mentioned, though, he said there can be positive things that come out of this. And the positive stuff can be that you've really reconnected not only with your life, but with yourself. And hopefully that's the positive side to a lot of what has happened with this isolation that we find ourselves dealing with. As it relates to the politics in this country, I just only hope that we can find some middle ground. I'm going to talk about this every show, that we could find some middle ground in this country, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you're like me, an independent. We're all Americans. The stuff with Donald Trump's brother is just indicative of how bad things have become. Let's have a little bit more integrity. Let's have a little bit more dignity in how we approach the differences in the ways that we think the country ought to operate. But there ought to be a better way than the way that we're at today. So I appreciate everyone for being with us. I'm your host, Frank Zaccanelli, on the 2B Frank Show. Don't forget, you can reach us at the 2B Frank Show YouTube, the 2B Frank Show Twitter, the 2B Frank Show LinkedIn, the 2B Frank Show Facebook, and the 2bfrankshow.com. And those are the mediums in which you can come out and you can take a look at our show. We appreciate you being with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Everybody have a great couple days. Be safe, and we'll see you on Thursday.